So in this section, we're going to talk about demand. What is demand? What drives people to create purchase quotes or purchased orders? So you have the informal request. So you're talking about somebody placing a phone call, somebody sending an email, somebody putting a yellow sticky post-it on your desk. There could be demand in your system for either a raw material. It could be that you need to place a buy and post it directly to a GL account, or you can actually buy a resource, even a fixed asset. So purchase quotes, purchase orders, blanket orders, they fully support items, GL accounts, resources. You can add comments. It's not just limited to your item card and inventory items. Demand can be driven by production. It can be driven by negative inventory. It can be driven by sales orders. It can be driven by basically anything that once you hit post, you're going to decrease your on-hand inventory. So just digging into those a little bit more. So the informal, so as I mentioned, this could be a manual purchase order. This is something where for some reason you've got a person who's initiating this buy. So a good example of that would be a Kanban system, if you're familiar with that. So buying nuts and bolts, you don't have to buy them and you don't necessarily want to track them individually, but you've got a big bin on the shop floor. You've got a line on that bin, and as soon as your nuts and bolts get lower past the line, you want somebody to just take a card or go and initiate a buy from somebody in the office. So that would be a really good example of an informal request to buy. So somebody's walking around, they're doing a physical count, they see that a shelf is getting low or a bin is getting low, so they go and they initiate somebody to create a purchase quote or a purchase order. You've got individual orders in the system, so that could be ordered through the material planning page. You could manually create purchase orders. It could be driven by MRP. So you can create purchase orders that are discrete. So you've got demand on one order, you immediately want to place a purchase order for another. You can have demand come from, again, anything that decreases your on-hand inventory. So that could be a sales order because the customer is purchasing for you something that you just immediately purchase from the vendor and ship to them. It could be through a production order, whether that's a finished good or a sub-assembly, but on the production order, there's a bill of material. That component demand is driving you to need to buy. You could have a print viz, if you're in the print industry, case that is used to produce, and it's got an estimating line with material demand. All kinds of reasons that you've got a decrease in your on-hand inventory. So you can place purchases individually, kind of one for one. So as soon as you get a demand that's going to decrease, you create a supply purchase order that's going to increase and replenish that. You also have the ability to put your cumulative demand across lots of orders into one suggestion for a given period, and you can aggregate that demand across one purchase order from multiple demand lines. So typically that's done through what's called the planning worksheet or the requisition worksheet, and you have opportunities there on the item card to set things up so that the system can look at maybe, over a period of time, multiple, let's say, production orders, and it can say, well, for the next 2-week period, you're going to need this item 10 times across however many different orders, and rather than buying for each individual order, you'll just create one purchase order that will be for all of those individual production or demand orders. So you have multiple ways to be able to satisfy your demand in the system.